My name is Robert Crandell, and I play a marginal part in the following story. I'm attempting to post on this site for scary stories on behalf of the author, which is my friend Jonathan Talley. John is currently serving a prison sentence for manslaughter. I hope that seeing this published in a public forum will help ease his mind. His mental state has deteriorated considerably, as you'll see. I'm not a superstitious person, so I have no trouble seeing it as the hallucinations of a mentally disturbed individual. If you are superstitious, I recommend not listening to it. So, here it is, reproduced word for word from John's letters he wrote while in solitary confinement. He has pleaded repeatedly, almost desperately, to post it on some internet site where it will be read. As of last week, he has been threatening to kill himself if he is not able to see it published on the web. And for the record, I did not do what John accuses me of at the beginning of this story. And to John, you will see this soon, and I hope it brings you some measure of relief. I should tell you now, dear reader, I'm writing this story from prison, solitary confinement. I've been in solitary confinement for a few days now, and it is for the best. I only hope that this reaches as many people as possible. These are the events that happened to me leading up to the murder and my incarceration. Whether you believe me or not is your business, but this is the truth. This is New York City. I'm getting back home late at night after a fine evening of friends and drinking. It starts to rain really heavily, but luckily I've just made it to the subway station. So I go down into the subway. I get into the car and it's empty. One stop later, a person gets on and sits in the middle of the car on my side. A young guy, early 20s. He is sitting with a strangely straight posture, staring at nothing, his head slightly tilted. A kind of wild look in his hair and eyes, like he hasn't slept in a long time. I put my earbuds in to listen to music on my phone. Yeah, Led Zeppelin. It's pretty nice. 2 or 3 stops later, I happen to glance up and notice, strangely, that the distance between this guy and myself seems to have lessened. He's still sitting the same way, back completely straight, head tilted, eyes wide, and staring at nothing. This is weird, but maybe I misjudged the distance before. I turn back to my phone. 1 stop later, I look up, and he is 3 seats away from me. And okay, now it's getting creepy. And I know this guy was getting closer to me for some reason. What the hell? I say. Look, dude, there's plenty of seats on the train. I don't want any trouble. He turns to look at me briefly. There's a wildness in his eyes, but he turns back, facing forward. And I'm watching this guy closely now. Strangely, I notice that his clothes are completely dry. He got on 3 stops after me, after it had started raining, and yet he had no umbrella and was completely dry. I can only conclude that he had not come from above. He had been down in the subway tunnels the whole time. At first, I'm thinking he may be homeless, but his jacket looks too new, and he isn't dirty. Oh well, it's New York. Sometimes there are weirdos on the train. He's kind of thin and pale, and I'm confident I could take him in a fight. But man, I don't want this shit tonight, and I'm a little dizzy from the booze. And suddenly, I hear a loud gasp. The guy turns and stares at me with a horrified look on his face. What? I shout. Part of me is getting pissed off at this asshole, yet I feel a shiver down my spine. His face is locked in a tableau of fear. Like the exact instant when something terrifying surprises you. And this guy's not acting, he's afraid. Seconds go by, feeling like hours. The guy's face is still completely frozen in fear. And by now, I'm sure he has some kind of mental issue. And then, he whispers something hurriedly. This imbind do. What? This imbind do. This imbind do. This imbind you. His whispering is fast and insistent, but I still can't make out what he's saying. Speak slower. He gets slightly closer and leans in, still looking afraid. This imbind you. This men bind you. This a man bind you. Dude, what the fuck is wrong with you? I'm shouting now. He grabs me by the shoulders and my body shakes from an adrenaline rush. There's a man behind you. The guy whispers in my ear and lets go, leaning back. His face is still wild, but now it's different. Like he's no longer scared for himself. He's scared for me. I can't help it. The incident is so weird, so creepy. I turn and look over my shoulder. And of course, there's nothing there. And then I turn back, seeing nothing. The guy is gone. Completely. There's no one in the subway car but me. I'm utterly alone. Somehow, in the time I look back, the guy must have ran into the next car. I hurry over and look, but all I see are two elderly ladies who give me a strange look. Shivering, I sit down and think. Now, dear listener, I'm a logical man. I'm not religious. I really need to see something just to believe in it. I don't believe in the supernatural. In fact, I'm sure most supernatural incidents have perfectly logical explanations based in reality, even if they have not yet been discovered. The problem is that people want to believe, and so they do. There's only one logical explanation for this vanishing, wild-eyed person. Someone spiked my drink. It was a hallucination, it had to be. As soon as I get out of the subway and above ground, I call my friend Rob on the phone. He was at the bar with me, and he's been known to be a joker. I wouldn't have put it past him to slip me something. Dude, Rob, what the fuck? I said as he answered. Rob pretended like he had no idea what was going on. You give me some acid shit? I was fucking hallucinating all the way back home. John, man, I really have no idea what you're talking about, I swear. Finally, I consider the possibility that he's telling the truth. There were other people at the bar tonight. Fine, man, but if I found out you're fucking with me, I'm gonna kill you. And I hung up. I called everyone I knew who had been at the bar that evening, and finally, I called Dave. Of course, same old deny. Are you sure, dude? I trust you, but I don't trust everyone else. What about, what's her name? Jesse's girlfriend. She was there by herself, which was weird. Maybe they just broke up and she was looking to date rape some guy like me by slipping LSD into their drink. No luck. No one poisoned my drink, and there was no reason to suspect anyone did. Yet what explanation was there for a disappearing crazy guy? For the next few days, I didn't think anything of it. Life slowly got back to normal. I didn't really think of the creepy incident on the train. I hung out with friends, went to work, drank at some bars. I was even able to take the subway without remembering what happened just a few days prior. And then the weird stuff started happening. Just a light brush against my body here, a soft whisper there, and an occasional breath. It felt like there was someone behind me. But whenever I turned to look, there was no one. Each time it happened, I was reminded of the subway man's declaration. There is a man behind you. A few days later, I'm walking home after buying some cigarettes. I not only feel a breath, but I hear it directly behind me, like someone's face is only a few inches away from my neck. My arms jerk backward, expecting to push away some horrible creeper, but I find only thin air, and I whirl around to face an empty street. Terrified, I run straight home and get right to bed, too scared to think about showering or brushing my teeth. Thankfully, the feeling is gone. I'm lying face up, and the mattress feels soft and safe against my back. I don't dare turn on my side or back for fear that the man will come back, hovering over me like some ghastly, evil apparition you always see in horror movies. For a few weeks after nothing happened, I started to feel better. Annoyingly, I became the butt of some jokes, people thinking I'm doing acid again. I keep telling people I don't do that shit anymore. I took the stuff years and years ago, but only a couple of times. And there's no way it's a fucking flashback. People ask me that so many times and it just pisses me off. No one came forward saying they drugged my drink, so I assumed it was some desperate, lonely girl in the bar hoping I'd become woozy and, she'd be able to swoop in and save me. Yeah, right. But then, I began getting this weird feeling that someone was watching me, behind me, just staring at me. A man behind me. I would be walking down the street and swear that the man was following me, only to turn back and see nothing. The worst of these incidences was in a restaurant with my date Julie. Immediately after sitting down, I get that feeling again. I sense him sitting at the table behind me and feel his eyes burning holes in the back of my head. The man is here, in the restaurant, watching me with that cold, obsessive stare. That terrifying expression, half a grin, half a growl. He has bloodshot eyes, wide open and staring, and crazy, untamed white hair. He's wearing a disheveled, vintage wool coat. Don't ask me how I know this, but for some reason I just do. Julie starts complaining how I keep turning backward, and she wonders aloud why she isn't entertaining enough to keep my attention. Finally, I whisper to her, "There is someone watching me, some man, behind me that is staring at me. Do you see him?" And she frowns at me and looks over my shoulder behind me, looks directly into what I am sure is the man's face. That horrible face. And I nearly expect her to scream out in terror. Instead, "I don't see anything." She looks at me strangely. She thinks I'm crazy, and maybe I am, but I know the man is there. And after this night, Julie never called me or sent me another message. Up to this point, I had thankfully never encountered the man inside my apartment. It had always been on the street or in some public place. I began to avoid leaving my apartment, and this gave me some small measure of respite. I took off from work and went 4 days without leaving my apartment. In those blissful days, I never felt the man's presence. I began telling everyone that I was sick as an excuse to stay in the apartment. If people asked to stop by, I obligated, but pretended I had a cough and runny nose. Dear listener, everyone has a weakness. Some trait that becomes his or her undoing. The one thing that friends and foes alike know and can use to their advantage. For me, this weakness is a beautiful woman. Hot chicks. I'm smitten. Always. I'm not a terrible guy. I've good hygiene and a decent paying job. And I try not to be an asshole. So I've done relatively well in the dating game. But I'm currently single, and most of my friends know this. So my friend Jimmy sends a text and a picture. Fucking asshole, I won't forgive you for this. And the text reads, "Dude, this hot girl wants to meet you." The picture, sure enough, is a smoking hot Italian chick, college age, my absolute fave. And I text back, she wants to meet me or she wants to fuck me? Keep it in your pants, dude. She said meet, but maybe more, I don't know. I sent her picture and she seemed really into you. Okay, sounds good. Where should I meet her? Come to my party, you're both invited, 7 p.m. tonight, my place. As it turns out, there's no fucking girl. Jimmy took the pic from some dating site and baited me into coming to his lame-ass house party in Queens. He tells me everyone has been asking why I've been so antisocial lately. But I'm too pissed off to care. I just want to go home. And as I turn to leave, that's when I feel it. It hits me like a brick. Oh, so familiar and yet still so terrifying. The man is here. The man is behind me, somewhere, staring. And I turn, and I see him. Or rather, I half saw him for an instant before someone passes in front of him. By the time the person moved, he was gone. But I swear I saw him, and I knew him instantly, even though I've never actually seen him before. Crazed, wild white hair, a head that was slightly too large and bloodshot red eyes, wide and insane. And his grin, an expression that could either be a grin or a growl. It's impossible to tell. He was average height, probably as tall as me. Jimmy has been insisting for several minutes that I tell him about my problems, completely oblivious to the horror on my face. And finally, I say to him, "Fine, Jimmy. The reason is I've been avoiding someone. And, well, he's here at your party." Jimmy gives me a weird look and starts looking around, confused. Dude, you know everyone here. Who are you talking about? A man. A crazy white-haired man that just stares at me with his horrible grin on his face. I think he's stalking me. Jimmy laughs. Is it like some gay guy or something? And this pisses me off. No, Jimmy, it's not some gay guy. I wouldn't care if it were some gay guy. In fact, I'd love it if it were just some gay guy. No. This guy's like some psycho serial killer, man. He just looks at me like he's hunting me. Like he knows I can't get away and all I have to do is leave the house and he'll find me. Okay, Jimmy says, humoring me. Let's go find this psycho killer and at the very least, kick him the fuck out of my party. He leads the way, room by room, noting every person we pass. I don't feel the man anywhere, but I'm sure he's in the house somewhere. And all of a sudden, I get the same overwhelming sense of dread. He's behind me, I'm sure of it. I turn around, and I see a closed door. Dude, what's in there? I whisper, pointing at the door. "That's a fucking closet, John," Jimmy answers. "He's in there. I'm sure of it." I look at Jimmy, and I could tell he knows I'm not messing with him. I'm genuinely terrified, and it's making him really uneasy. He asked the people in the room if they saw anybody go into the closet, and everyone answers either no or they weren't paying attention. Jimmy slowly creeps up to the door. As he gets closer, the rest of the party around me seems to fall away, as if there is nothing but me and Jimmy and the door. And the man, Jimmy, gets within 5 steps, and I can't help it. I freak out. I know that the man is behind the door and that he's coming for me. He seems almost gleeful, like he's been toying with me this whole time, but now he is ready to come for me. For real. I turn and I run as fast as I can out of the house. I vaguely hear Jimmy screaming at me that there's no one there, that the closet is empty. But it doesn't matter. I know the man is there, and I know he's coming for me. My lungs are nearly bursting as I reach the subway entrance. I hop over to the entrance rail and just barely make it onto the train as the doors close a second behind me. I turn back, exhausted. The man has stopped. He's above the steps, at the subway entrance, standing just out of sight. But he knows, and more importantly, I know I've escaped. For now, at least. And I sigh, letting the fear drain from my body. There was only one person on the train with me. A big, burly guy. Dark brown beard, mid-30s, probably had been going to the gym every day since he was 15. Just on a whim, I went up next to him and said, "Dude, there's a man behind you." He looked up at me, and his face scrunched up. For a second, I felt like I was going to get punched. Then he bellowed, "Fuck off, you crazy bastard." I couldn't help but laugh at myself. Yeah, it sounded so stupid. I threw my hands up defensively. "Sorry, man. I'm just drunk. Don't beat me up." I didn't have a drop of liquor in me. Hadn't had a single drink since that other night on the train with the other guy, the night this whole fucking nightmare started. When I got out of the train, a gust of cold wind blows past me as the door to the train closes, and my brain screams in terror. The man is here. Somehow, he is here, and we both know that I'm alone. I bolt up the stairs and into the night. I don't dare look behind me for fear of what I see, but I know what's happening. The man has given me a slight head start, but he is now running, sprinting down the street in an unnaturally fast pace. He's going to catch me. I can feel it. I have my keys in my hand as I make it to my apartment building and jam the key into the lock, and I sneak a glance back. The street is dark, but I can see the hazy outline of his shape as he runs towards me, his white hair flapping up and down with each step. I finally get the door open, hurry in, and slam the door behind me. Relief washes over me so quickly that I almost black out. My heart is pumping a mile in a minute, and I'm gasping like a madman, but I can't help but to laugh. I feel safe. Looking out the window, I see him. Or I don't see him, but I know he is there. He is standing in the darkness just slightly beyond the range of the nearest street lamp, and if I focus hard, I could barely see the outline of his white hair. After this incident, I stopped pretending to be sick. I didn't go out. And when people asked why, I gave them no reason. I took some phone calls, but I did not let people into my apartment, even if they visited and knocked on my door. Other people came and went, so I couldn't prevent the man from getting into the building. But I sure as hell wasn't about to let him into my apartment. If my friends insisted that I open up, I just got angry with them until they left. Slowly, but surely, the inevitable happened. I made it through everything in my fridge, then all the canned goods I had stocked up, then everything in the freezer. The last day before my hell really started, I had nothing but a bottle of whiskey. Well, whiskey is made from grain, right? It's like eating a loaf of bread. I downed half of it. It didn't help. I was still hungry as all hell. I can't help it. I cave. I order takeout. About half an hour, the Chinese delivery guy arrives, and I press the button to let him in the door. In less than a minute, I hear his footsteps. My stomach is grumbling in anticipation of getting some real, actual food. As my doorbell rings, I stare out through the peephole. Sure enough, it's an Asian kid, either late high school or early college age. As I open the door, he gets a look at me and gives a start. Suddenly, I become self-conscious. I probably look like a mess. I haven't really been taking care of myself. $10.30, he says. I get a $10 and a $5 bill and thrust it into his hand and snatch my food. Thanks. I don't need change, I say, eager to just close the door. Thanks, mister, the kid says, smiling, and I smile back briefly and start to close the door. But then, just before it closes completely, I notice it. His smile, his grin, his growl. The man. He's the man. I stare out the peephole, and my breath catches in my throat. There's no one there. I look down. I stare at my open hands. There's no food. And suddenly, my apartment is chilly. The man is not here, but something still feels terribly wrong. Like some protective barrier has just been broken. And I'm now at the mercy of the man. Like the lighting has changed. The sunset colors outside my window seem more pale and foreboding than usual, cold and hungry. I lock both the locks on my front door and hurry into my bedroom. Under my covers, I sigh as a feeling of safety returns. I try to reassure myself. Even if the young delivery guy was the horrible man, he's still outside. My sleep that evening is dreamless, but I still wake up with a start, drenched in cold sweat. It is now completely dark outside. I look at my clock, it's 4:17 a.m., and my bladder is completely full, like a tight water balloon that could burst at any moment. When I can't stand it any longer, I leap out of the covers and hurry into the bathroom. I start peeing, and it's the most glorious pee I've ever had in my life. I stand there for nearly a minute, even after I finish sighing with relief. Finally, I wash my hands, deciding I'm just going to go back to bed. Screw the fact that I haven't eaten anything today. I'm feeling slightly nauseous, and I realize it's because I'm hungover from the whiskey. As I leave the bathroom, I notice that there's a weird light in my apartment. And that's when I see my front door is fucking wide open. With a strangled yell, I rush over and slam it shut with a ferocity that surprises even me. It's no use. He's here. The man is here. He's behind me. I turn on the light, but the man is nowhere. He's behind me, no matter where I turn. He's always behind me. And finally, I catch my reflection in a mirror. I stare at myself. I could see the wild terror in my eyes and my heaving chest as my breath rushes in and out. But I see behind me and he's not there. Not there. For a moment, my mind can't resolve this conflict. I flip-flop between this overwhelming mental sensation that the man is behind me and the visual proof from the mirror that he is not. First, the mirror is truth, then a lie, then truth, and then a lie. The conflict is strangely comforting. I go right up to the mirror and look past my reflection into the room behind me. He's not anywhere in the room, and yet I know in my mind that he is there, that the man exists. If I could just make it to my bed, I know I'll be safe. I dash away from the mirror into my bedroom and crawl under the covers. And the relief is short-lived. Even lying on my back, I know he is there. He's buried under the mattress, just underneath me, and I feel his arms coiling around my rib cage. Even though my head is against the pillow, I could feel his breath against the back of my neck. I scream and jump out of bed and into the corner of my room, and the man stays buried in my mattress. Suddenly, he sits up, staring at me with those same intense, angry eyes, and his mouth locked in a grinning growl. I can't look up. I'm too scared, but I know what he looks like and what he's doing. He cocks his head slightly and whispers, "No escape." Dear listener, you may have felt fear before, but you don't know fear the way I knew it in that instant. To have the man staring at you, and you knowing you can't escape, frozen in fear. I sat like that, literally, feeling like that for hours. But it might as well have been days. The man never moved, never said anything else, just sat there, half buried in my bed, head cocked and bloodshot, angry eyes staring at me. There I sat, in the corner, my head down, completely paralyzed, cold sweat dripping from my forehead. The sun came up. Something was weird about him, though. Like the light was different for him than it was for everything else in the room. As if the sunlight was not reflecting off him properly. Feeling overwhelming fear for so long, other thoughts finally started to creep through my mind. He is feeding off my fear, yet he hasn't really done anything. He has looked at me creepily. He has chased me down, but he hasn't actually done anything physically to me. Somehow, I find the courage to stand up and rush out of the room. As I do, I feel him behind me. Every step I take, he takes one too, in perfect lock step, always close enough that he could wrap his arms around me if he wanted. I figure if I could just get my mind off him, maybe if I could just ease this feeling that he is behind me. My phone is nearly dead, but not quite. Grabbing earbuds, I thrust them in my ears and turn the sound up as high as it can go, and I play a song, anything, just to take my mind off the man behind me. Nothing But a Good Time by Poison starts blaring in my eardrums. By the time the lyrics start, it's starting to take the edge off my fear. Now listen, not a dime, I can't pay my rent. I could barely make it through the week. By the time the chorus starts, I'm thinking this might work. I might actually just be able to take my mind off the fear. I start to become delusional that I might be able to break the man's hold of me with the power of rock and roll. Don't need nothing but a good time. How can I resist? Ain't looking for nothing but a good time. And it don't get better than this. And right as that line ends, my arm twists violently behind me, and I feel his clammy, dead hands on my wrist, and a cold breath on my neck. "You think you could shut me out?" comes a cold, reptilian voice. I scream as I feel the skin on my back splitting open. I whirl around, seeing a bloodied butcher knife on the table. And to this day, dear listener, I try to argue that the slash on my back could not possibly be self-inflicted due to its angle. But physicians noted that my arm was twisted as well, allowing for the possibility that I slashed my own back myself. They don't believe me, that the arm twist and slash on my back were both inflicted by the man. Still, feeling that man directly behind me, I grab the bloody knife and whirl around, expecting the knife to cut into the man's face. Instead, I find air. Of course. Still holding the knife, I dash out of my apartment, not bothering to lock the door. I fly down the stairs and out of the building. The man is right on my tail. I run out into the street, but he is right behind me. And every time I turn, he rotates with me, like some horrifying cartoon character that you can't shake. I turn around fast, but he is faster and still behind. I turn again, and he is still behind me. I turn one more time and stab downward. One of these times, I will catch him. And my knife sinks 6 or 7 inches into an elderly lady's eyeball. So, that's the story. I committed manslaughter. To this day, that is the part I regret the most. I regret that my fear of this man, whether or not he is a hallucination, caused the unintended death of another person. I am sorry beyond what any words can express. Do not look now. Do not move. And I would once again convey my condolences to Mrs. Carpenter's husband and her son and her son's family. She did not deserve this, and if I could go back in time, there is a man behind you right now. I would turn the knife on myself instead of her. And if it had been my death there instead of hers, it would have been better for all parties. Now, dear listener, here I make an apology. Did you look? Or even if you didn't, did you want to? Any slight doubt? Any pang of anxiety? If so, then, like the young guy at the beginning of this story, I probably disappeared from my cell. And I'm sorry for what you will go through. But please believe me when I say I just desperately need relief from the man behind me. Even if it means passing him on to a stranger, such as yourself. Remember that it starts with a brush here and a whisper there, a slight sound, a footstep, a passing breath, a rustling you can't explain, a sudden prickle on your back. My only advice? Do not ignore him. It only makes it worse. Good luck.